This week's lecture will look at covert behaviors in a little bit more depth. We often think of covert behaviors as our thoughts and feelings. Let's think back to our earlier discussion of respondent conditioning, and in particular, Watson's Little Albert experiment. Through the Little Albert investigation, Watson demonstrated that fear can be a conditioned response. The experiment began by presenting a white rat to Albert. Albert had no learning history around rats, so he responded with just typical curiosity and some enjoyment. In this case, the rat would be the neutral stimulus. The experimenters then began pairing the presentation of the rat with a loud noise. Unexpected loud noises do not need any learning to elicit a fear or a startle response in humans. Therefore, this stimulus would be an unconditioned stimulus. Immediately after the noise, Albert would cry and show signs of fear. This was the unconditioned response. After several pairings of the neutral stimulus, the rat, and the unconditioned stimulus, the noise, the fear response was elicited just by presenting the rat, which is now a conditioned stimulus. The rat had done nothing to harm Albert. The only reason it now caused Albert to cry and try to get away from was because it had been conditioned. We learn an association between the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus through the simple process of pairing. Stimuli that are frequently paired with the unconditioned stimuli will become antecedents for the conditioned response, meaning that they will set the occasion or cue the behavior to occur. These conditioned stimuli can be pleasant or unpleasant, like hearing the ice cream truck will make your mouth water, or hearing a fire truck siren nearby will make you break out into a sweat. The emotional responses can be elicited by conditioned stimuli, meaning they are learned responses. There are two types of respondent conditioning, first order and second order. First order conditioning is like the Little Albert scenario. A neutral stimulus is paired with an unconditioned stimulus and becomes a conditioned stimulus. In second order conditioning, conditioned stimuli are further paired with other stimuli, and those new stimuli will become conditioned too. If we look a little deeper into the Little Albert scenario, we can see how second order conditioning could have occurred. If the presentation of the rat as a conditioned stimulus elicited the emotional response, what if the rat was then paired with the experimenter? Could the experimenter then become a conditioned stimulus too? These conditioned emotional responses include two categories of fear: phobias and anxieties. Phobias could include something like an irrational fear of spiders or the number 13. Anxieties are fears that have a vague or unspecified source, like public speaking or being in large groups. People acquire conditioned emotional responses through direct or indirect respondent conditioning. The direct respondent conditioning, you actually experience the process. You actually have an experience where a spider elicited the fear response. In indirect respondent conditioning, you don't actually have to experience it, but can rather acquire the learned response through modeling or cognitive processes. For example, your mother was always afraid of spiders, and through seeing her flip out around them and talking about how awful they were, you learned to fear them too. Respondent conditioning has an important role in substance use and abuse situations. Substance use involves a combination of respondent and operant conditioning. The operant conditioning occurs because the substance feels good and acts as a reinforcer. Remember, operant conditioning means consequences are at work in the learning process. Respondent conditioning occurs because it develops conditioned stimuli that evoke conditioned responses. Alcoholics will salivate or show signs of arousal when shown a bottle of their preferred alcohol. Heroin addicts will show increased arousal or biologic reactions to being in an environment where they frequently shoot up. Although behavior analysts often focus most of their energy on overt behaviors, there are behavioral methods available to help reduce unwanted thoughts and feelings. One of those strategies is to use extinction of respondent behavior. This tends to happen gradually and is not a quick fix. While extinction can reduce the response to 0 levels, it does not eliminate it from our learning history or our behavioral repertoire. If the situations arrive that occasion the behavior, and that behavior is reinforced, it will reappear. The same will happen when respondent behaviors are put on extinction. If the conditioned stimulus is again paired with the unconditioned stimulus, the conditioned response will occur again. Let's look at an example. If a young boy has a fear of dogs because a dog bit him, we could set up a situation where he has lots of contact with a friendly dog over a span of time. Over time, the friendly dog, which had once been a conditioned stimulus for the emotional fear response, will not be paired with the unconditioned stimulus, biting, pain. The longer that pairing is broken, the greater the chance that the boy will no longer show the fear response when in the presence of that dog or other dogs. This brings us to the process of systematic desensitization. Systematic desensitization reduces the conditioned emotional response by presenting the conditioned stimulus gradually while the person stays in a calm and safe state. This process is very gradual, and each step is presented contingent upon the person remaining calm for the duration of the step before. If we were interested in using this to reduce spider fear, we may start off with a spider 25 feet away while the person reports feeling calm and safe. Then we would bring the spider 2 feet closer each subsequent step. If at any point the person reports or shows signs of fear, the spider would be pulled back a bit further away and would restart bringing it closer and closer until that person could comfortably be very close to that spider without experiencing any fear.